Hey, we got a fun episode this week. James and I sit down and chat about some updates, chat about some stuff we missed in the past year or so, and some new AI updates as well. I think it'll be a reoccurring thing. Then we talk about the topic of the week, specialization. Also, if you have a question or a suggestion for the podcast, make sure you email it in at minordetailspodcast@gmail.com. I think we might start picking a few questions to answer on the episodes. And you guys know the deal. Like, subscribe, give us 5 stars, all the fun stuff. And yeah, let's hit it. Hey, welcome to Minor Details. I'm Nick.
And I'm James.
We're 2 designers in the big city.
Sweating the small stuff.
James, you didn't do the sweat
know. I'm not that sweaty today. It's kind of cold out.
It is a chilly day.
Yeah.
It's like our first day of fall, I guess.
Brisk.
Yeah, we've updated the video setup, trying to at least. Got a new crisp camera.
Yeah.
And I put a big curtain in front of James so that, there's no echo. We'll see how that lasts.
What, specifically for me?
Yeah, man. You remember when I covered my entire...
I'm an echo boy?
James, you remember my bedroom was covered with
Echo
foam.
the dolphin? It's because of me?
Yeah, you do sonar. You have sonar location. That's a good talent, actually.
Yeah. I can spot objects from miles away, their curvature.
But yeah, we got some updates, I guess. Big news on your end, James.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, big news for Peloton in general. I guess the rower was launched this week. Very exciting.
Yeah.
I think it's my, just like, aside from the fact that I worked on little bits of it, I think it's my favorite Peloton product. Like, just because I think it's like one of the most beautiful pieces of equipment that they've done so far. And so big shout out, Mark Cruz, lead ID on that project. Such an inspiration to work with. I'm so lucky to work with that guy every day. And
it's exciting. I know it's been in the works for a while.
Yeah, it's been, years and years. And of course the pandemic delayed things. But yeah, I was, fortunate enough to work on a bit of it right before, we moved out to LA. And even while I was in LA, I worked on a bit of it. But very, very small portions.
Yeah. The minor details, they'd say.
Well, this is all like front end.
Okay.
But yeah, minor parts of it. But yeah, it was,
Let's dig into the details. You got any fun little details?
I mean, I don't know how much I can say, but yeah, I mean, I guess it doesn't, I don't know. It's not that big of a secret. So I worked on the seat. Okay. And I worked on sort of the initial phases for the handlebar.
Nice.
But again, like really rough front end work. So yeah, but Mark Cruz, lead ID, and then I know Nigel Alcorn, Perry Burke, Elora Jaggi, and then the design director, Jason Poor at the time, killer ID team that brought that thing to life. I mean,
that thing is like such a, I don't know, it's like a feat of engineering.
Yeah.
And to make it beautiful, that's a tough thing. I mean, we've done like dog toys and stuff, which is super easy. Just make a chunk of rubber look nice. But this, like having those mechanical parts come together and
yeah, I know. It's
manufacturing too. It's crazy.
I mean, I think a large part of what Peloton design is to me is like engineering precision married with like this like human touch. Yeah. Like there's like a soft, inviting quality to it, but it's not so soft. There's still a bit of like an edge, a precision to it.
Right.
So I think
It's
that's
lean.
like,
It's lean soft.
I think the marriage of those two things is, it communicates like everything that is great about Peloton,
Yeah.
like great equipment, welcoming equipment. I love my favorite detail of that, and I can take no credit for it, is that back foot, the soft triangle back foot. Because, if you think about it, like all of the shots of that piece of equipment are going to be taken from the back because you need to see the content on the screen.
Right.
So, for any sort of promotional. And so like to have that as like the foreground, it's just so iconic.
Triangle is such a pure shape.
Oh,
Such a stable shape.
one of the strongest.
Yeah.
But yeah, so pretty exciting. I'm really pumped on that. So yeah,
Looks awesome.
yeah.
I mean, the funny thing is, we're doing these weekly now, and just like time flies, man. It's not like we'd have much things to update on, but it's been 2 years, we're just getting back into speed, and I feel like I'm remembering things that I did in the past 2 years that I have to bring up again because we just haven't talked about it.
Right.
And one of those things is my VR design course. So I did a VR design course for Almond School of Design, and it was interesting. I'd never done a VR or any design course at all, and it's just like an online course, and I think it's a lot harder than I thought. I mean, you probably felt that way with doing some of the video for your model making kind of workshop thing.
Yeah, I mean that was I would say that I had a very light lift on that. That was mostly Andrew Brace putting together the sort of like lesson plan. But I also taught SolidWorks at FIT, but I was given a lesson plan.
Oh, okay. So you didn't have to make one.
So you had to develop your own lesson plan, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I had to walk like really think about what my process is.
Yeah,
and write it down and walk through it. And yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because it's this very ambiguous thing that you try to, I guess, turn into some sort of system to be able to teach it. I don't know how good a teacher I am, but I think the video turned out great. If you guys, definitely go check it out.
Yeah. There's sort of like a thing that's often said about teaching that like sometimes the teacher learns more from. Yeah. Because like you have to really think about like your process, why you do the things that you do, like how you approach things, and it sort of brings up all sorts of questions within your own process. Yeah. But I would say like, especially with FIT, with doing sort of like in-person classes, it was just like being asked questions of like, why do you do things this way? Yeah. And it's like, do I have a good reason?
Yeah, that's interesting too.
Yeah.
Would you ever, are you going to go back to teach one day, you think?
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe one day.
I feel like I get asked about it occasionally, and I don't know.
What do you think?
I feel like maybe when I'm older.
Yeah.
Or also
old, out of touch.
Yes, exactly.
Skills totally irrelevant to the current market.
Can you believe it? They'll just be like, "Oh, this millennial, he's using VR to design and not his brainwaves." Yeah. What?
He's not even microdosing on DMT. Like, exactly. How does he expect to get anything done design-wise?
I was gonna say one more thing about the class. I forget what it was. Oh, no, I know what it was. One thing that I guess this is spurred on with my kind of recent year or two is like the idea of writing. And I think we talked about it a little bit in last podcast, but I think I want to do like some sort of newsletter because it helps me organize my thoughts. I realized how, especially with taking this business course, like how organizing it is to write out your thoughts on design and such. And I've done a little bit of that, but it's something that I kind of want to get into more. Yeah. And I don't do like a newsletter too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really write too much. I mean, I've started to write more in my process, but I find a combination of writing, but also talking.
Talking the pod, yeah.
Because writing, you're getting some feedback, but it's more about that like organizational thing, whereas like talking is like hearing yourself saying those things out loud.
And you're like, oh man, I'm so dumb.
I think it's good to do a bit of both.
The other thing that I wanted to do too is like, there's I guess we have a few extra topics on AI, and then I have a quick note that I missed last podcast too. So I went to this design event with Kiki and her bench, and you know who was there?
Who?
Debbie Millman, the pod queen.
Whoa.
The OG design podcaster.
Yeah. Did you go up and say, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy?
I don't think she knows who I mean, I doubt she knows who we are.
We're only 1 degree of separation away from her.
Yeah.
With Scott Henderson.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like we know enough people. So she did a podcast. She did a live podcast. So I forgot this part of the story. So
while you guys were there?
Yes. Okay, so this is interesting. So Debbie Millman has this podcast called Design Matters, if you aren't familiar. I think it was really popular, 4 or 5 years ago. I remember in school listening to it, I think. And now I think she does a little bit of a different podcast. I think it's called something else. I gotta look it up. But anyways, she's obviously, OG.
Right.
And I didn't know that she was going to be there. So when I saw her, I was like, oh, wow, this is cool. So there was maybe about, I don't know, maybe 100 people.
Yeah.
For this event. And it was at Bjark Ingels' studio, big.
Oh, nice.
And, in downtown Brooklyn. And Debbie gets up there and introduces the two guests. Kiki was one of them. I forget the other one. I'm sure that we could look at the podcast and see what it is. And, Debbie's like, we're about to do a live podcast. And I was like, oh, no way. This will be interesting. And so she gets up there and she starts off. She has that classic podcaster voice, but I realize she edits a ton.
She auto-tunes?
No. Maybe there was a auto-tune on it.
So key.
Yeah, she introduced the guests, and then she's like, wait, sorry, y'all. I didn't like how I introduced the guests. Let me try it again.
Whoa.
Yeah, so there was a few
double take Debbie
times where she would reiterate the same question or statement just to have the audio content to edit out, which everyone has their own method.
Yeah,
and I guess that's why she's the queen, right? She has a polished podcast. But like I was like, yeah, we barely edit.
We have the method of amateur and out.
I don't know. I thought that was a fun observation.
Yeah.
I didn't get to talk to her. I did see her. I mean, the thing is that when I saw her, I could tell she was deep in the zone of like researching, the interviewers or interviewees. Right. And, because you want to be prepared when you interview someone.
Yeah,
you don't want to just like ask generic questions. And
no, what kind of podcasters would do that?
Well, we interview people. You saying us? we research our guests.
Yeah, we do. We do.
I mean, I guess we haven't done a bunch of higher profile people, like Debbie has. Obviously, Debbie's done like people like Bjark, I'm sure. And
and there's like something to if you are interviewing somebody who's like been interviewed before.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
it's not a great time for the interviewee to be asked generic questions that have already been documented multiple times elsewhere.
Yeah.
But that was a fun little anecdote that I missed last week.
Nice.
Other topics that we missed too. We wanted to kind of go back and cover AI. I mean, this is going to be a perpetual thing. I think we're going to be talking about AI for the rest of maybe eternity. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think, of course, like after you've finished recording an entire episode talking about something, then like an hour later, a day later, you're like, I missed that one thing. Yeah, missed that one thing. Or yeah, you just like are still thinking about it and something new strikes you that didn't on the day. But what was your thought?
Well, one thing that I think we missed was the idea that AI, I think, we've talked about how AI is probably coming for 3D models at some point. I think AI is also becoming for rendering. Because if you think about it, and I've tried to dabble with this a little bit, like to render something out in KeyShot as a PNG and then put it back into AI like Dolly, and it will fill in the background. So you could essentially type, instead of like creating a whole scene for your chair, you could just render the chair and then AI will put it in, on the beach or in the forest or in a, modern house.
Yeah.
Which, each of those doing individually would take, hours if you did it really nicely.
That's cool. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
What struck me is that I just can't believe that Allen Iverson is doing all of this himself.
Who?
Allen Iverson.
I don't even know what that is.
Point guard to the 76ers back in the late 90s, early 2000s. He's doing all of this work by himself. It's insane.
That's not how it works, man.
It's crazy. He must have like servers upon servers.
This is a football player.
No, basketball.
Oh my God.
Famously didn't practice, mostly because he was working on developing artificial intelligence after his own initials. But no, I mean the thing that I thought of after like a couple days later was that there's something that happens with design where a lot of the form and what comes up within industrial design, like you think about design throughout history and you think about different manufacturing techniques that were innovated during a time period, and then you see how it manifests itself within design.
Right. Like molded plywood, obviously.
Yeah, molded plywood.
Plastics, injection molding.
Plastics, like bent metal tubing. I don't know, at what point that was innovated, but I mean, it makes me wonder, because I feel like AI design, like 3D design, which you see mostly in like Fusion 360, like something that's pumping out like actual models.
Right, like the generative stuff.
Like that all feels like it lends itself well to certain types of manufacturing, but like AI, I don't know how AI will respond to an innovation within manufacturing that has nothing to do with AI. Like,
that's true.
And how like that will impact design, but like will AI be able to like understand that new technology quickly enough to be able to like, spit out things that are relevant to that new manufacturing process?
That's interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah. Because, essentially what you're saying is like, I would say maybe a new technology, fairly new, or through new manufacturing method is like 3D printing metal, something like that. Right. I don't think AI could look up images of 3D printed metal. But again, going back to the whole strength of AI, it's all about the data. If there's not a lot of data, it's not going to be able to produce something.
Right.
And I don't know how much data, images there are of 3D printed metal, but I, would say it's much less than traditional woodworking or something like that.
Right.
So that does make a lot of sense where AI wouldn't be able to explore that area of design.
Yeah.
Because it's not trained on it yet.
Right. And like, I mean, 3D printing does seem like it could achieve some of the things that I've seen Fusion 360 pump out,
right.
But also 3D printing is not an economical process at this point. Like in terms of being able to produce large quantities at like a decent price.
Hold my beer, I guess.
And also just like the quality of the finish as well. Like that's that kind of stuff, like 3D printing is not yet at the stage where it can like, surpass the level of like cost effectiveness, surface quality, whatever, as like plastic injection molding, for instance.
Yes. I'll agree with you that it doesn't surpass.
Ooh, a disagreement. I sense a disagreement coming on.
Well, it doesn't surpass cost effectiveness or material finish, right?
Yeah.
But I do think the trade-off obviously is customization.
Sure.
And I guess just, like print on demand. No warehousing, no
Right.
upkeep or like startup costs. And I think you are right. Like I think we're on the cusp of this though, because I think, we have some newer companies coming in the field, obviously like Gantry with the lighting. They are building factories full of printers.
Right.
And producing mass quantities of very like tailored, customized lighting. And like, obviously like, I don't know if they've got it to the point of being more efficient than somebody like, IKEA, but it's a different direction. It's a different approach.
Sure.
There's pros and cons to it.
Yeah, and this is no knock on Gantry because I bought a Gantry lamp that that I love.
McKay's, right?
Huh?
You have McKay's?
No, well, I actually have two Gantry lamps.
Really? Okay.
I have McKay's, and then I have, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name.
Lewis?
What's his last name?
Filson? I gotta look it up now.
It's like the sphere. What I don't even remember the name of it.
I think I know what you're talking about.
But I ordered this.
Louis Filosa, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think he's now design director at
Or is
Quip.
it Louis? Is it Louis?
I don't know.
You gotta ask if he's French or not.
He's I think he's the design director at Quip now. Ex Karam Rashid designer, and also after that he went to Method, and now he's at Quip.
Okay.
But anyway,
He lives in New York.
Yeah,
Have you
he
met
lives.
him?
Yeah, I have not met him. But let's
Just
see.
reach out to him.
Yeah. But what I was going to say is like, I really love what Gantry's doing. I ordered my lamp and I was like, I didn't receive it for 6 months.
Because
like
it takes time to make.
It does take time. And I mean,
And
like you're saying,
when did you order
a
it,
trade-off.
Because I do think they were behind definitely with the pandemic. I think everyone was behind with the pandemic.
Right.
So you might have ordered it during.
Yeah, I
crunch time,
forget.
too.
I forget the exact dates. But yeah.
James, you just gotta be patient though. Listen, in this fast-paced world, you just need to be patient.
Yeah, I just need to sit in the dark with my thoughts. But no, I mean that is the trade-off currently, and like obviously also with the light itself, like they're able to like coat and paint the bodies of the lamps.
So they figured out the finishing part, but
the lights are still, you see like the layers of the 3D printing and you can lean into that. But I think like, I don't know if that's something that the average consumer is like, oh, I don't really care. Or if it's something they're like, what is this? Like, I think, there are early adopters and sort of like, yeah, I'm going to buy that 3D printed thing because the technology is so interesting.
Right.
Like the surface quality is a result of a really fascinating technology. So like, I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if average consumer would be okay with like that condition for every product in their home.
Yeah, it's a tough thing, especially just plastic itself is not it doesn't equate to like high quality feel,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like maybe if we can get to the stage where we are doing desktop metal 3D printing, then that seems like, especially at a much more accessible price point. Obviously right now it's super expensive to buy like a metal printer, but maybe that's where it starts to break into this kind of new manufacturing revolution.
Yeah.
I guess they
totally.
have that with like jewelry. They do a lot of metal printing with jewelry.
Yeah.
but not larger scale.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, so that's where, to bring it back to AI, like, I just don't know. Is 3D printing like, is that where everything is heading, or is there some other process that we're not anticipating that's coming? And again, like, how does AI respond to those innovations?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, because AI is I guess, reflective tool. Maybe is that maybe a good way to say it, where it's looking at the past and creating, I don't know, just new images from the past, and not necessarily looking at the future and exploring those new technologies.
Yeah.
I will say, I was reading another article this past week around AI, and it kind of brought up the same point in a weird way, where if we see AI as it is today, and who knows where it'll be, but imagine AI slowly starts to take over, right? It slowly starts to kind of get rid of the jobs that are just, reskinning design. At some point, in theory, if AI is just doing all of design, then it is now stuck in this loop of only coming up with designs that are referenced from the past, century or however long there is digital images. And we could, if people just forgot how to design, we would just literally be stuck in this, 2020s era of design forever.
Right.
Because it's not creating new ideas, right? But this also goes back to the point of like, well, are we creating new ideas? I don't know. But I think you have a good counterpoint with this manufacturing thing, right? Because, it's these, scientists and engineers who are inventing these new manufacturing techniques that do impact design and open up new doors of possibilities.
Yeah.
And AI probably wouldn't be able to tackle that, and it would just be stuck in this loop.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I will also say that I've seen the critique of AI that, like, yeah, it's only referencing the past.
Right.
But like, aren't we all just referencing the present and the past? But then, like, I guess we are then bringing it through the filter of like the technologies available to us.
Yeah. And I think this is actually specific to our industry, right? Because we make physical things that need to be manufactured. If you think about graphic design or illustration or those type of industries where it's less impact. I mean, obviously there are super impactful technologies that emerge in those industries, but like painting, like, has there been a new paintbrush invented? I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah. So those are our updated thoughts, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I could talk about AI.
Yeah. We should just have an AI segment at the beginning of every episode. This is what I thought about this week.
Okay. And then eventually the AI segment will just be an AI computer talking about itself, but in our voices. It'll sound like us, but it's really AI.
Yeah.
It'll be like when we go on bathroom break, we just flip the AI switch,
right,
and we can go.
I feel like if we were to make this an AI podcast that, like, basically just replicated you and I talking to each other, it would be of the quality of a final episode of Debbie Millman Design Matters.
Yeah, you're probably right.
No double takes. It would just be, yeah,
perfect. Yeah, no audio qualities, no echo. I was going to say another thing, James. We can, whatever. Have you thought that this podcast will, let's say 100 years in the future, we're both dead. Or maybe, I don't know, we could live. Could live to 130, who knows. But we're both dead. This podcast could then be used to train an AI on your personality. So then your grandkids could go and like talk to you,
right?
And it would have your voice. It would have your like thoughts about design,
right,
and life. Yeah, have you thought about that?
It's
because this is like a rare thing. I don't think everyone has a catalog of 100 episodes.
Oh man, that just made me think of something else. Because like The only way that we're able to get sort of like close to the designers of the past is to like read their words or their books or watch interviews or whatever. Like that means that if you were really curious about a designer and wanted to know how they thought about things, how they would think about, your work, you could essentially get a critique from any designer throughout history if there's enough data around them and
that's wild.
Their voice and their thoughts, and
that is wild.
That's weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, essentially like would the written word, would that have as much impact anymore if you can just go and talk to somebody from the past? Like that's what books, that's what a lot of books are for, is to like understand the thought process of somebody from another time period.
Yeah. And I guess that does beg the question of like, is it authentic if the AI is generating it from past, information?
Yeah.
If you ask, I don't know, Raymond Loewy what his favorite sandwich is, I don't think that's written down anywhere, and
maybe they can extrapolate it from,
just has to make inferences about like, oh, he lived in the 19,
something
40s
with
or something.
Something with eggs, right? Didn't he love eggs? Like
he did have shape. There was egg on one of his books.
Yeah,
on the front of the book.
He liked a good old breakfast sandwich. He liked a good old eggy McMuffin from
I don't think
McDonald's.
They had McDonald's back then.
Yeah. He flew his private jet to the nearest McDonald's.
Raymond Loewy is
the
wild.
eggy McMuffin.
You know what Raymond? Excuse me. And maybe I think I might have read this during the pandemic. The Raymond Loewy book. It was given to me by one of my old bosses that I interned for, and I finally got around to reading it. Raymond Loewy, he was like Mad Men. Don Draper.
Right.
He was like Don Draper legit.
Yeah.
That lifestyle, the 50s, 40s.
Right.
Flying his jet around everywhere. Can you believe that? I mean, can you believe like, I guess Johnny Ive probably has a jet that he flies around in.
I have to take a city bike across states.
I was thinking about this though. The reason he was so successful is that he's credited as the father of industrial design.
Right.
He kind of invented the industry career or the path. And when you're the first one on the block, everyone wants you and they'll pay for it.
Right.
So that was kind of kind of his success thing. It was just, less, I mean, obviously he was a great designer, but I feel like less about his design, more about his timing.
Right. But he had the foresight to see that it was an industry in itself. Yeah. I need to read that book. I've never read that book. Yeah. I have read a shameful, little, I have read very little. I've looked at a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's what it is. When we're creative people, we like to look at pictures.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of pictures in the book, so it's that's why I waited 5 years to read it and wait until okay, I'm stuck inside. I guess I'll do something productive. I guess that kind of transitions into the topic of today, right? Like potential career paths.
Yeah.
Right? If Raymond Loewy trailblazed industrial design, what's the new pathway for designers nowadays?
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Raymond Loewy was the type of designer who literally designed everything, every part of an experience of something, because he worked a lot in
transportation,
didn't he?
Yeah, he did
trains and
wide-ranging
planes
industries. I mean, he did trains and planes. Probably planes. I don't know if he did plane. Maybe he did.
I don't know.
Maybe.
But I feel
Definitely did trains. Cars,
I feel like I heard that he did he would design the uniforms and he had. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I've got this all wrong. I haven't read the book. You did. You tell me.
Well, I have to dig in my memory. He did the Lucky Strike packaging for cigarettes. Yeah. So he did graphic design too.
Did you do the Coca-Cola bottle? That's somebody else.
No. I wonder who did design the Coca-Cola bottle.
I thought it was him for some reason.
I'm gonna look it up now.
Yeah. God, this is really terrible. This is really exposing.
What I was thinking? We should do a new segment where each week or maybe once a month, one of us researches like a designer that's lesser known,
Yeah.
and just does like a history podcast or a history section.
That'd be cool.
But yeah, I think we kind of wanted to explore what potential career paths designers have nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously things are always changing. But, I'm curious. I know you were talking to me a little bit about like specialization.
Mm-hmm.
I got to give credit to Ryan Hume, who's an avid listener, designer, and participant in the Discord. He kind of mentioned this idea, or kind of thought it up, but there's this idea that designers can, I think we all start out as a junior level, right? Just doing the CAD work, rendering. At a certain point, though, in order to keep progressing in your career, you kind of have to pick a path. And those paths are, you either rise the ranks in your company, become a senior level designer, and then eventually a manager, where you're not doing much design, or you break away and specialize really, really deeply in some part of the design industry. It could be a specific, topic like exercise equipment or like dog toys. Like, I kind of fell down that hole. Or it could be like a specific software or craft. I think about Tim Zarkey, is very specialized in, his industry, doing, amazing 3D visuals. And then the third idea was design entrepreneurship. You break away and you create your own business, whether that's a consultancy or a product business.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think about those pathways?
I think you covered it all. I think the episode's over. Yeah, I think.
Oh, he did. I'm looking up the Coca-Cola.
He did design the Coca-Cola bottle. That's what I thought.
See, you weren't wrong, James.
Thank goodness. But yeah, I mean, I think back to when I graduated from school, and I just had this sense of there was only two paths or something. It was like corporate or consultancy.
Right.
And that was it. But everybody, I would say, in school, at least of my friends, were all just like laser focused on consultancy. I think we were sort of like sold the idea that was the peak of that was where you should be as a designer, or like that was the goal.
Because consultancy is glorified design, essentially.
Yes.
Right? Like,
yeah.
You wanted to go work for Frog or Smart.
Right.
Or
Everybody
Minimal.
gets shown that IDEO video from like 60 Minutes or some like ABC show where they just redesign the shopping cart.
I don't think I got to see that.
You
one.
never saw that?
No.
Oh, come on.
Give me the gist. What was the video about?
It's basically like
It was
it's IDEO. It's some news segment from 10, 12, 15 years ago, something
early
like that,
2000.
where they go to IDEO and they're like, this is a design firm. Like, we're going to ask them to redesign the shopping cart. And so they do some research. They go to a supermarket. They interview people at the supermarket. Then they do a sticky note brainstorm. They do all the standard
good design process.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in the end, I think they're and 2 weeks later, they produce this functional model of what the shopping cart is that they designed. And it's cool. It's a very cool segment. It makes it definitely romanticizes design and design at a firm. But I think that, and when I was in school, Fuse Project was a huge deal. They were the design firm that was really pushing things, it felt like.
Yeah.
and they really knew how to like market themselves.
Oh, I remember
as a design
they
firm.
were big back then with like the jawbone, like the texture.
But I think, of course, like on the other hand, there's like Apple, and so you like those are your two things that you're
the
thinking
holy grails. Yeah.
And you're also thinking like, okay, well, there's just the path of like being a designer, like being the traditional designer of like I sketch, I CAD, I, like whatever.
Right.
And I don't think that it's understood like how many different paths you can potentially take within design. I mean, it depends on where you are at school.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing too is I think in school, your focus is to get the job, right? It's very much, I just want to get in the door somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I think those two options are the most prominent options. Like, go work for the consultancy or go work for the corporate company. And you don't really see this idea of specialization or this idea of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Or I guess even managerial stuff. But
I'm just like trying to think of the different jobs that I know of now that I didn't know of then, which is like, I had no idea that like CMF designers were a thing when I was in school.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that was anything that was ever discussed. And yeah, like I don't recall it being a part of the conversation, but since coming to Peloton, we have some CMF designers on staff, and it's like, if there's a company out there that you think is doing like really excellent design work, like all the big tech companies, I would say a large part of that and like a lot of the credit should go to people like the CMF designers.
Yeah.
Because like, if you think about the big tech companies, a lot of what they're doing, which we're most excited about, is like the way that they use materials and like incorporate it into the tech. Because like most of what we see form wise is like minor variations on sort of the same archetype, but then the materials are really what tends to shine.
That's true.
And, I think, I think there's also like a misconception about CMF designers, if you do know about them, that they're like, oh, like once the design is done, now is the time for CMF to come in and do their thing.
Yeah.
But like a good organization, good design organization, like their CMF designers are doing research ahead of development and, understanding what the material technologies are out there and educating the design team and bringing inspiration in. Like, I've seen presentations from this group where it's just like material samples on like real products on just like plates of like, here's
dinner plates.
Yeah.
Here, would you like to try it? You got a Sam's Club and they give you a little.
One of the designers the CMF designers that I work with, she was on the Surface team that brought that sort of like fabric-y material to the Surface laptops, to the keyboards.
What's it called?
The Surface line.
I know what you're talking about. I'm trying to remember the material name.
I don't remember.
Okay.
But like that kind of thing, like I remember seeing those, and just being like, wow, like what an amazing answer to like everything that Apple's doing. 'Cause this feels like it's taking a totally different path and a very unique path.
Alcantara.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
And I want to shout out the CMF designer because she's awesome.
Okay.
But I don't remember. Oh yeah, Rachel Bell.
Okay.
I didn't remember her last name for a second there, but yeah, I think like that's not a part of the field that I don't know if that's widely known.
Yeah.
Within, because like I don't know. We talk about design education amongst ourselves all the time of like, you have that feeling of like, how far removed are our professors from the industry? And I don't know when CMF design became like as big of a thing as it is today.
I mean, you're definitely right thinking about it now. I don't think I've made that observation as acutely as you have. But when I think about a lot of the tech stuff, just because you're saying it's like mostly, the archetype's mostly finished, just those random rectangles, it does seem like all the past interesting things have been CMF, color, material, finish. I think about, obviously we talked about the clear nothing phone, clear back. That's very much CMF.
Yeah.
I mean, we did some clear stuff. And that's, like you said, you don't design the object and then decide to make it clear. You make it clear first and then realize that is the feature, right?
Yeah.
And it's almost like CMF should come before industrial design when it's that kind of impact.
Yeah, or at least in line with design as the front end process begins.
Right.
But yeah, like I think we should have a CMF designer on, like Rachel, because I think it would be so valuable. Because it's like, I think it's a real unsung hero of industrial design.
I usually just
contemporary.
Stick with like satin or matte refinish and just make it black or something.
Yeah, because these are the types of people that are going to alert you to like material innovations that are happening. Like we're talking about with the AI conversation. So like, it's so valuable to the team.
Well, and there was this other example too. I don't know if you remember this one or not, but so I was talking to Tim Zarkey, and who works at Meta, helping out Oculus team, and the Oculus Quest 2 is white. And I don't have we talked about this on the podcast?
No,
we might have talked about this. I can't remember. But it's good to talk about it again. The Oculus team wanted to do the Quest 2 much more, to make it much more approachable, make it more mass adopted instead of this dark black kind of more aggressive quote unquote gaming device. Making something white, it's more approachable, it's more light. Your mom could like put it on and try it out, right? And they couldn't do white because the white plastic, the black plastic was a special type of plastic that let infrared light through, because there's all these sensors on the VR headset so that it can track everything. And that's the only type of plastic that they could use was this black plastic. It's the same kind of plastic on TV remotes. And so the white only came about through its material innovation, right? They got a factory to figure out, how do we make see-through white plastic instead of just see-through black plastic?
Right.
And, that again goes back to the CMF thing of like, the design is the way it is only because of this material. Right. And not because of just, some designer picking white.
Yeah. That's cool. But I don't know, can you think of anything that's sort of not discussed in design school that you discovered in your professional career?
I guess for me, I was viewing this topic as like, what happens when you're, 5 years into the field and you want to change directions or try something different. And so that's kind of where I went with it, was like, how do you give advice to someone who kind of wants to move to the next step but doesn't know what that direction should be? Like, should you specialize? Should you become a manager? I guess that's just gonna have to be a personal question.
Well, and I would say that there's even like sort of there's like specialized managers, because like I think that you can also sort of get pigeonholed.
Yeah.
And I understand like pigeonholing can sound like a very negative term, but like maybe there is a certain industry that you favor over others. Yeah. So for instance, like I started the pigeonhole.
Pigeonhole only applies to people that specialize in something they don't want to specialize in.
Yeah.
Because other than that, it's just specializing in what you love.
Right, exactly. Because I started out in like kitchen tools and gadgets, right. And like it is weird when you get out into the field and like if you start working corporate immediately, you find out that you can very easily fall into this ecosystem of like, oh, I'm just like moving around from different kitchenware companies.
I did the same thing with dogs.
Because like you like start to specialize almost in like a certain part of the field.
Right.
And I will say, I mean, I was sort of interested in consumer electronics for a bit. That is a really difficult field to get into if you have no experience with consumer electronics. I feel like it is very like specialized. The people who have started in it, like sort of stay in it, and it feels a little bit more gate kept.
I mean, it's definitely the Silicon Valley, like, you know, bubble right there.
Yeah.
They're all there.
Than other industries. And like, I mean, I guess it's understandable because there is a learning curve to consumer electronics.
Right. Or
And
any like
sure.
any industry. I mean, I'm sure that you could design a nice, like, you know, colander for pasta. you know exactly how those draft angles should work.
Yeah, I wonder if it would be easier for somebody from consumer electronics to move to kitchenware than the other way around. I don't know.
I don't know. That's a good question.
Because like I will say that, okay, I'm sorry if I offend anybody
You
with
can
this.
offend people, it's fine.
But obviously right now with consumer electronics, the type of CAD that you see is like, I mean, there is curvature and advanced curvature that's built into it, but we're not talking about like particularly ergonomic,
Right.
Focused forms. I mean, yeah, like they have to be ergonomic to some extent, like they have to fit into a hand or something.
Right.
I mean, I would say like the closest like consumer electronic to like what like translating in terms of like skill set to kitchenware would be if you were designing like video game controllers, right. VR controllers, like that kind of sculpting is very necessary to be able to understand in order to do kitchenwares, because a lot of those things are still very sculpted, you know, ergonomic forms.
Yeah.
Versus, you know, and so like I don't know if that would be an easy transition or not. But the thing with consumer electronics is like understanding how you negotiate with like the electrical engineers and the mechanical engineers for like how the housing comes together, where all the parts are. Like, you know, we experienced at Control Labs, we were designing, you know, around electronics, and we were like, hey, we'd like to put a button here, and the electrical engineers were like, yeah, we finished the board like months ago. There's no way we can move the button over there.
Yeah, you got to put the button on the other side or something.
Yeah, so like, you know, there's things that like,
and then
that
we sit in the corner and cry.
that like you and I didn't necessarily understand, having not done consumer electronics before. I mean, it was a great learning lesson, but you know, that's just like a totally different mindset.
I'm so proud of our product.
Oh yeah. I don't think that like we had to make crazy compromises on it, but there are things that would have been like nice to kind of like know, to like incorporate in the process, like when to like involve the mechanical engineers, when to involve the electrical engineers, so that like we had a bit more flexibility with where we were putting things. And I'm like, you know, to that, I'm like, should consumer electronics design be a course in school, or like where does school come into this?
Probably like some courses, right? There's got to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's certain schools.
We had, I think it was called interaction design as a entire major or minor at SCAD. It might have changed by now. I think SCAD always is adding like the newest thing. But that one was very much both involving software and hardware.
Mm.
Because we had UX and UI, and that was obviously, just software. But interaction design was how do you marry the two? And it was a lot more like robotics, Arduino kind of stuff.
Right.
And a few ID people I knew took it and made like robots and vending machines and stuff like that. QR codes and all that stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the thing about, my journey, I always have loved furniture, houseware,
Right.
everyday objects. But when I started, I didn't want to pigeonhole myself.
Mm.
And, I don't know if I'm happy with the progression it's taken, but definitely kind of starting out broad, going into pet and then just dabbling in, all kinds of industries, medical, exercise equipment, tech, whatever. And then wanting to come back and specialize now in furniture feels, definitely like a process that I've been working on for many years. And, I wonder like where the path would have taken if I just studied furniture design and just went straight from school into it. Or even, because I think I actually was offered an internship for a furniture company after school, but I also was like, yeah, sorry, I want to have a salary. I got student debt to pay off. So I took the pet job instead.
What attracted you to furniture design, and then like what do you think is the most difficult aspect of furniture design?
So I think it's actually kind of the same question, because the beautiful thing about furniture is it's much more on the sculptural side, right?
Yeah.
It leans much more into the artistic world. I think obviously design is a spectrum between art and engineering. You can go all the way over to engineering where, I guess like you're doing like super ergonomic devices that have like no room for, playful, whatever, silly things. I'm trying to think of something, maybe like a wheelchair, right?
Mm-hmm.
Although you could do a cool wheelchair that's like playful. I don't know. But you could be on that side of the spectrum, or you could be all the way on the other side of the spectrum where you are making a chair that you can't even sit in.
Right.
It's not even like, it's not even structurally sound, or like, it's just more of a conceptual art piece at that point. I don't know. I've always grown up loving the art side of things. I mean, I did art in high school. We didn't have design. We just had art class or engineering class. I took both. But, always painted and sculpted stuff. And it has always been attracted to me. So I think staying more on that side of the design industry is where I thrive and what I enjoy the most. And that's also, I think, the challenge is that when you start to dip into the furniture industry, it is, especially where I'm going, where you're trying to build a reputation around your name, it is almost like an artistic practice, right? You are kind of building emotion into your design and kind of stamping it like an artist would, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Picasso or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, doing that is like a whole other challenge of like, you have to be particular about building your brand and what your voice is.
Right.
And how you express that. So I don't know. I mean, that's a lot what I've been working on, at least with my business and stuff.
And I can also imagine, similar to an artist, like the criticism of your work versus like if my work that's like mass consumer gets critiqued, there's a bit of it where I'm not the only designer working on these things, especially a Peloton. Like, so it's not as much of like a personal attack, but I could imagine like getting critiqued as a furniture designer where you're trying to put your personal stamp on something. It can feel very personal.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. It's a challenge too. And I think too, what's another challenge is a lot of the furniture industry, especially when you like study furniture design, a lot of designers go straight to their own practice and lean more on the high design, you know, the
Mm.
kind of art design side of things, where they'll make one-off chairs for $10,000. That's not what I enjoy. I mean, sure, I'll make a chair, you know, just for fun, but I don't, you know, I'm not like, I don't want to design collectible stuff. Or that's not like the dream goal. The dream goal is to do mass produce stuff. So I still want to lean on that side of things.
Yeah.
So there's just like this fine line that you have to ride with that industry specialization.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's just like, I think it's just like with everything, just baby steps.
Yeah.
Baby steps to kind of turn the boat.
Yeah.
And, you know, delete the dog toys off your website. You know?
Melt them down, make them into chairs. Maybe since we're getting, you know, kind of up towards the end, I think, what if we just did sort of like a quick, because I'm sort of conscious of like the students out there that are trying to like figure out where they're heading and like what their options are. So maybe we just do like a lightning round of like what we can think of in terms of like industries.
Oh, I didn't prepare for this, but I'll try.
I mean, there's obviously furniture. There's
outdoor products.
Outdoor, medical.
Yeah, medical. Yeah, medical is definitely on the engineering side of things.
Yeah.
Like if you like that ergonomic stuff.
Well,
maybe
I
baby
know
steps.
some people who work in medical. I think it'd be really interesting to talk to them because that's something that I have very little knowledge of.
Yeah.
But I've heard really interesting things about.
I mean, I had a medical client for the past 3 years, and obviously now with the recent kind of pivot, I'm not working on that stuff anymore. But yeah, it's definitely a different part of the brain they get to itch. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it's like, a different mindset. Flip the switch.
Totally. There's athletic. I mean, athletic outdoor, but I think athletic could be kind of its own like focused thing. I
think one thing too is accessories have been pretty popular.
Oh yeah.
A lot of my classmates that I went to school with went to work for like bag industry, or I don't know, purse industry, accessory industry, backpacks, purses, shoes, footwear. And that's a whole like specialization,
Yeah. It feels like with that kind of industry, you almost need to like, because it makes me wonder if you do need to start specializing in school. Like I feel like I know people who like sort of figured out like this is exactly the kind of industry I want to get into.
Yeah.
So I need to start padding my portfolio with these kind of pieces.
I mean, if you know that in school, amazing.
Yeah.
I feel like I was too afraid to commit to furniture because obviously it's just it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, totally.
I guess that's another part of the equation too. It's like this idea of specialization is a little bit scary because you are kind of like pigeonholing yourself to begin with. And if you can't get into your specialization, you have nothing. You can't go general. Like, if you only design shoes, it's like, and no shoe company wants to hire you, it's like you can't just go do dog toys.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
I think that's what I was afraid of.
Yeah. No, I knew my buddy, I'm really shouting out this episode.
Got a lot of
me,
shout-outs.
I'm shout out king.
Yeah.
My buddy Charles Hahn, I sat across from him summer studio, like the qualifying studio to get into the ID program since we were transfers. And he was sitting there sketching shoes like day one, even before we had started like our design program. And, now he's working for Nike. Like, he knew like he was he was a shoe sketcher and like, but I think that he understood, like he definitely branched out and became a much more well-rounded designer and then brought that back into focus. And yeah, I mean, like just totally dedicated and, doing awesome work. But yeah, I don't know. Like sometimes I envy those kind of people because I definitely just did not know what I wanted to do.
Yeah. I mean, I envy that too.
Yeah.
Just the commitment. I mean,
Right.
I knew what I wanted to do. I just couldn't.
Yeah. But that's also to say that if you don't know what you want to do, then there's still hope.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, if you guys have other ideas around this specialization topic, or, other industries that we're forgetting, other kind of niche areas of design.
I mean, transportation.
There's so many.
There's so many that we're probably forgetting.
I'm just curious because I feel like someone will send in something that we never even thought of. And that's what I want to know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, send it in if you got it. But yeah, I mean, good episode. I feel like we didn't even touch on the design entrepreneurship / management side, but maybe we can save that for another topic. Time.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, that's definitely a different direction you're just doing. Like, both of those are very business oriented.
And I mean, that's like sort of like once you're in the organization,
right.
like, because like there's like we talk about CMF, but there's like strategy, there's research, there's a lot of specializations within a specialization or within a company.
For sure.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Good app. All right. I think that's it. As always, I'm Nick.
And I'm James.
Peace.
Later.